Just over the last week, we've had way over 100 Shahed drones targeted at Kiev and dozens of cruise missiles. So, some get through, and people have been killed. Really sadly, a mother and child who couldn't get into a shelter because it was locked. Good morning.
This is a really interesting message from the Ukrainian government, because it kind of suggests a bit of an inconsistency. We've been expecting the counteroffensive for months now, but now it seems to be on hold because of the lack of weapons.
So everybody's talking about this counteroffensive. I mean, I was last here in March, and we literally thought it was about to start just after that, and it was a spring offensive. But at the time they said that the weather had been very wet and the fields were very muddy, which was difficult for the equipment. Also, they were still waiting for tanks from Europe and the US, so it was sort of on hold. But I have to say, I thought coming back now it would be starting. It's now sort of become a summer offensive. What's not clear is whether they're deliberately sort of putting out different messages to confuse Russia, or whether it still is not decided when it will happen.
Yeah. In terms of the messaging, I suppose it does tally with President Zelensky's recent visits to 10 countries, holding more than 60 meetings, that perhaps, the lack of weapons matches the fact that he has been meeting world leaders over the last few weeks and months.
Well, this is what his chief foreign advisor, Dr. Sofkas, was saying, that basically, he's been traveling like crazy. He's been doing sort of 48-hour trips to Hiroshima. He did a 12-hour trip to Chisinau, in which he met 30 different, had 30 bilaterals and met 48 leaders. So he said, obviously he wouldn't be doing that if he, in a normal situation, but the message with all these meetings is that we need more weapons. And it's not just weapons for counteroffensive, it's also more air defenses, because, as I'm sure you know, the Russians have been rather relentlessly attacking the country by air, particularly Kiev, where I am, over the last month. And although Ukraine now has good air defences, they're managing to intercept about 90% of these Shahed drones and cruise missiles. Some are still getting through, and of course the air defences are being depleted by all of these attacks.
What is it like living in Kiev at the moment, Christina? What is it like in this renewed phase of bombardment of the capital?
So I was last here in March when it was fairly quiet. Now I came at the beginning of this week, and it's very different every night. There are several air raid sirens, and whereas before people were really ignoring them, now people are going into the shelters because there have been a lot of missiles coming in. Just over the last week, we've had way over 100 Shahed drones targeted at Kiev and dozens of cruise missiles. So, some get through, and people have been killed. Really sadly, a mother and child who couldn't get into a shelter because it was locked. So it feels a bit different because, people are not getting enough sleep, basically, because the nights are being disturbed. So everybody's a bit tense. I mean, I don't think that it is changing their resolve. In some ways, it's making people even more determined that they should launch this counteroffensive against Russia. But it is getting to people. You wouldn't be normal if you went night after night with your sleep being disturbed for hours and it not affecting you.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I want to ask you as well, just on the sort of theme of equipment, another piece in the Sunday Times today, which is about Ukraine's drone war, I suppose, and the female drone army, as it's described, the school of pilotesses. This is about getting more women to become drone operators. Is this because there is quite a drastic shortage of operators, or a willingness of women to serve in this way, or perhaps both? What's causing this?
I think it's a mixture. I mean, drones have never been used as much in a war as they are being used here. And it's a kind of strange mix, this war, because you've seen the pictures of front lines like Bakhmut, where it literally looks like the First World War. It's all muddy trenches and big machine guns and artillery. But then at the same time, it's very high tech. You've got drones being used on a really big scale, and they don't have enough drones. They don't have enough drone operators, and everybody in Ukraine is wanting to get involved in the war in some way to help. And so this was something that women who don't want to go to the front line are finding that it's a good way for them to help. So this school has been set up. They've trained 100 women so far, and it's a mixture. It's partly using the drones for surveillance, and also they can go quite deep now into Russian areas to see movements. They're also using them for sort of humanitarian reasons, for dropping supplies, for dropping medicines. But they've also created these combat drones, and they've set up these combat drone squads in the Ukrainian army, which use drones with a payload to drop missiles and destroy expensive Russian machinery. It's a very cheap way. These drones cost maybe $10,000 to do something, to wipe out equipment that is costing millions of dollars.
Yeah.